Hey everybody, it's Matt. So I wanted to go through this with everybody. I think this is a really interesting piece of basically marketing material that's put out, updated every quarter. S&P Dow Jones Indices is a company that creates indexes. An index is just a way to define a group of stocks or bonds or other types of investments. And what they do is they put together their SPIVA scorecard. SPIVA is S&P indexes versus active. And what they're trying to illustrate is that active managers have a really tough time outperforming indexes, either in just one time period, like 1 year, or consistently over time. And so what we can look at is the latest results. We can look at various regions. I'm just going to focus on the United States. And what we're going to see is the percentage of large cap funds, meaning funds that invest or prioritize investments in US large companies, what percentage underperformed just the S&P 500 index. And over the last year, about 78% of large company funds underperform. That's this light shaded blue. The group that outperformed is this bottom darker shaded blue, 21%. So if you were trying to pick an active manager and pay extra for that expertise and analysis and active management, only about 21% of those managers outperform just the S&P 500 benchmark index. And that's over the last year. And what we're going to find is as I click through different time periods, you're going to see that the amount of managers, the percentage of managers that underperformed is going to go up, meaning the managers that were able to beat over the longer time periods is going to go down. So over the last 3 years, only about, call it 2/3 of managers underperformed and 1/3 outperformed. So good for them. That is good. That's better odds than what we saw over the last year. But then we start to get out into longer time periods. Over the last 5 years, 89% of active managers have underperformed the S&P 500. Only about 11% have outperformed. Over the last 10 years, 85% have underperformed, still not great. 14.5% were able to beat the S&P 500 over the last decade. And then over the longer time period that we see, close to 90% of the funds underperformed the S&P 500, with only 10% outperforming. And so you'll see statistics like this espoused by people like me who recommend people just use low-cost index funds to get broad exposure to stock and bond markets, both in the United States and around the world, because your odds of picking a manager that's going to outperform in a meaningful way are pretty low. And sometimes the pushback that we get is, well, if you're good at your job, you should be able to pick the 10% that are going to do well over 15 years. And that's where this persistence scorecard comes in. This is much less frequently discussed, but I think it's a really cool, interesting thing to look at. And what it's doing is it's saying, okay, of the managers that were in the top half of performers back in 2021, calendar year 2021, how many of them were able to stay in the top half of performers 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, all the way to 5 years later? And the answer is only 4.5% of large cap stock funds remained in the top 50% after 5 years. So, of the funds that were in the top half performers in calendar year 2021, by 2022, they dropped 2023, 2024, 2025, and it's broken up by all domestic funds, large, mid, small, that kind of thing, and then broken down by different size. And one thing they show is just the expected persistence, just based on statistics, and that's that dotted blue line. So the idea that if 4.5% of funds that were top half performers in 2021 have remained top half performers through 2025, the odds of picking, the 10% that are going to beat the S&P 500 over an extended period of time are extremely slim. and it's not something that people can do consistently. It's hard enough for the fund itself to do this consistently. You add another layer of a financial advisor or some other guru or social media expert being able to predict this stuff. I mean, the odds are just extremely low. It's not worth the time and hassle. And so this is just one of those kind of consistent examples, putting some numbers behind the philosophy of just use an index, use a broad index, keep it low cost, keep it tax efficient, get global diversification. Don't try to beat the market. It's not your full time job. And for even for the people that it is their full time job, it's extremely difficult for them, first, to do it. And then, second, for financial advisors or other gurus out there to pick the ones that are going to do it is next to impossible. So I just think this is really interesting and kind of a shocking result if you've never seen it before. Thanks.